My name is Brian Savino. I am the Product Marketing Manager at Trello, and today I'm joined by Trello Product Manager and Retrospective Expert Jess Barnett, as well as our Support Specialist Katie Cogdell. So the goal of this webinar is to follow up on the first part of the Trello Agile series, which covered sprint boards, with how your team can create product roadmaps and retrospectives in Trello. For those that missed the first webinar in our Trello Agile series, which goes in depth into successfully running Agile sprints in Trello, check out our webinars page, trello.com/webinars, where you can watch the webinar on demand. So full disclosure, I am not a Scrum Master, but I hope that through this webinar, you'll have plenty of takeaways to bring back to your team when it comes to adapting some Agile practices into your workflow for increased productivity and team transparency. So after this presentation, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about retrospective and road mapping boards. If you have any questions, please type them into the GoToWebinar question box, and I'll be addressing as many as possible during the time allotted with help from Jess and Katie. You can also email any questions to support@trello.com, and our support team will be glad to answer any questions that you have. Also, I want to let you know that I'll be recording today's webinar, and we'll email a copy of the recording to all attendees and registrants. And we'll be following up with links to the boards demonstrated today, which you can copy, and some other helpful resources. So what are retrospectives? From the Agile Manifesto, a retrospective for development team is defined as, at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts their behavior accordingly. And so while Agile and Scrum dev teams may have popularized the idea, retrospectives are incredibly helpful for teams of all kinds. Some families even hold regular retrospectives at the dinner table. The fundamental goal of a retrospective is to figure out ways to work better. Happier people doing more of the best possible work as fast as possible. So retrospectives are done in all sorts of different ways. And while we might be a little biased, we think retrospectives done with Trello are the best. To paraphrase our product manager, Jess Barnett, who will be joining me in the Q&A after the presentation, using Trello to run retrospectives creates an environment that is open and encouraging to all participants, placing introverts and extroverts on the same level. Everything is written down and easily accessible by every team member, creating a shared history of every retrospective. Also, everyone gets to write down their own thoughts on a card and then read it out loud, making sure that no one's ideas are paraphrased by the retrospectives facilitators, and everyone is encouraged to speak. Finally, it facilitates a democratic process where the most important issues are discussed in depth by the entire team. And action items are created to address those issues. So considering that sprints are often heads down, focusing on the tasks to accomplish during the sprint, this leaves a room for a little pause. So retrospectives are essential for taking the time to reflect as a team what went well and what can be improved, with a clear mind, but not too long after the sprint occurred, while thoughts and feelings are still fresh. Scrum teams typically run retrospectives at the end of each sprint, but they definitely don't need to be limited to that. They can be held regularly with any team or cross-functional team. So let me dive into a retrospective board. So this is a board that might be, let's say, we're going to start showing the board that might be kind of mid-retrospective, so you get a better idea of how the board is laid out. So this board consists of 4 lists. Went well, needs to change, questions and discussion, and action items. In the went well, this list is for all positive aspects of the sprint. People to thank or recognize, and just parts of the process that went really well. It's always good to be able to congratulate a team after a well done job, since sprints can be so intensive. Next up is the needs to change list. This is a list for anything that people think needs to be changed, improved, something that maybe we should stop doing as a team in sprints or have complaints about. The next list is the questions and discussion. And this list is kind of for anything that people want to talk about, but maybe doesn't clearly fit into the other 2 lists. Finally, we have the action items list. And cards are moved to this list as they are discussed, and action items that need to be addressed and implemented around them are decided and assigned. So really, retrospectives should start with everyone joining the meeting being added to an empty retrospective board. Members can be added from the sidebar, or you could actually share a link, if you see right here, an invite link to join the board, which can be shared with your team via Slack or any chat app or email. Simply copy and paste this link and invite someone to join the board. Since more and more teams are partially or fully remote, it's likely that some or all of the retrospective participants will be joining the retrospective by video chat. So Trello makes it really easy to incorporate remote teams into the retrospective in two ways. First of all, Trello always updates in real time for everyone, meaning everyone is in sync that's involved in the retrospective board. Second, Trello integrates popular video conferencing apps like Google Hangouts, Join Me, and Appearin as power-ups. You can enable any one power-up for free on a team board, and you just click power-ups. And if your team uses Appearin or Google Hangouts or Join Me, you have a dedicated room where everyone that's involved in the conversation can easily jump in to join the conversation and the retrospective. So I can simply enable this. I can even have a custom room name for my team, Team Retros. Update that. And now I can hop into that room. And everyone on my team can meet me here. Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to my home office. So when the meeting starts, once everyone's joined, you've established a meeting time, you've added all your members to the board. The first thing that should be done is everyone adds cards to the retrospective board in either of the first three lists, depending on the subject to be discussed. As I mentioned, what went well, needs to change, or other questions and discussions that should take place regarding the sprint. I'm going to hop right back into this board to demo. So simply just encourage people to add a card for what went well. The great thing about running a retrospective in Trello and giving time for everyone to add their cards at the same time is that introverts will feel comfortable since they can think and then write, as opposed to a retrospective where a facilitator is documenting feedback on a whiteboard, because that it encourages extroverts, or extroverts will be dominating the conversation essentially. So using Trello prevents extroverts from dominating the meeting. In fact, retrospective facilitators can even share an empty retrospective board for input days before discussion starts to give team members some time to think about what they'd like to cover during the discussion. So anyway, once team members add cards, they should add themselves to the retrospective. To the cards that they create on the retrospective board. And by doing that, when we go through the process of going through the board, we'll know who should read their cards out loud. A quick tip is you can easily add yourself to a card by pressing the spacebar. Save some time as opposed to dragging your avatar over to a card. So basically, next up is once after a set amount of time, typically 3 to 5 minutes, the facilitator can ask if anyone needs any more time. And at this point, if not, then the team goes through each list and cards are read aloud by the person that created the card. At this time, anyone else on the team is encouraged to ask questions or request clarification. And so when all the cards have been read aloud, it's time for the team members to vote on the cards that they think are most important. And so to do this, the facilitator should make sure to have the voting power-up enabled right here. And you can set to make sure that all members of the board or any team member can vote. Usually in this application, we would want just the members of the retrospective to be able to vote. So team members can quickly vote on cards by hovering their mouse on a card and pressing a V on the keyboard to register your vote. And as you can see, the number of votes is tallied on the front of each card. If you click through, you can see which people have voted on the card. And basically, this is a way to prioritize what we want to discuss during the retrospective. So after a few minutes of voting, everyone should be ready for discussion. And this is an important step because it makes sure that what the team deems most important to discuss is discussed during the retrospective. So starting with the highest number of votes either in the needs to change or questions and discussion list, the facilitator would drag the card into the action item card column and read it out loud. And a really quick tip, in case if you have a lot of people participating in retrospectives or a lot of cards, and you want to quickly surface which cards have the most votes, there's a Chrome extension. It's a third-party Chrome extension. It's not developed by us, called Ultimello. And I'm going to put this in chat just in case anyone wants to check it out. And you can get that. You can check out that Chrome extension if you want. But what it does is you can sort lists by votes. So during your retrospective, you can use the Ultimello Chrome extension to surface at the top of lists which cards have the most votes. But anyway, starting with the highest number of votes, we go through each card as we drag these cards to the action items list. The person who created the card will speak to it briefly, and then the conversation naturally opens up to the room to discuss. So generally the most important part of this process is to kind of drive excuse me, my microphone cut out for a second. The most important part of this process is to drive out action items for each card, things that can be done to improve the issue. A good action item is specific enough to be checked in on during the next retrospective, and hopefully it has been accomplished by then. Something more than, we like to try better at this is probably a good idea to have during the discussion. So as you can see in this card, a big description has been added about what could be improved. And really then, when the team has agreed to an action item for a card, we agree that this is something we need to improve. We can move on to the next card and talk about that as well as an item that needs to be improved during the next sprint. Then at the start of the next retrospective, you want to make sure to come back to this board to revisit the action items of the prior retrospective to make sure that the issue has been resolved, or at least progress has been made. If progress has not been made, then it's important to have a discussion again about what is blocking the progress on any action item, as it may be affecting the success of future sprints. And by doing this, it also builds trust into the process. Because if these action items are not acted on in your group will probably conclude that retrospectives are a waste of time, or maybe even depressing. And so what you want to do is make sure that you have one of these boards set up for every single sprint. At the end of every sprint, whether that's a 1-week sprint, a 2-week sprint, a 4-week sprint, and go through this process. Always start by championing the successes. And then always talk about what needs to change, questions, confusion that arose during the sprint, and create some action items to improve. Really, in the end, a retrospective is not that complex to hold. It just requires someone who's willing to facilitate the conversation and process around having a retrospective after each sprint. I want to give a quick little tip here. As I mentioned, it's always good to have a blank board for each retrospective. And what you can do is you can actually have a blank board as a template, so you don't need to create lists. And you can copy that board for every retrospective. So in the menu, click Copy Board. And I'm going to name this 10, 24, 16 retro. And now I have a copy of this board just that's ready and available that I can add my team to. I don't have to always go through each time. And this way it keeps things separate from your past retrospective board. So you have your previous board where you can go back and look at the action items that came up from your last retrospective. So as I mentioned, it's a pretty straightforward process, and that's basically how you run a retrospective in Trello. Just make sure you facilitate conversation and seek to improve your process, and make sure your entire team is engaged, because you want everyone to feel comfortable creating cards, sharing their frustrations, and also sharing their wins. This will make a team more effective and efficient moving forward in future sprints. So next up, I want to talk about the product roadmap board. So the product roadmap is a place to keep track of all of the features, ideas, or requests from stakeholders and customers. And it's often at a higher level than the individual tasks to build a feature. It's also a way to transparently share with your company upcoming projects and goals that are going to be worked on. So Trello makes it easy to create a product roadmap that clearly defines and prioritizes features, because each card contains a feature or idea to be developed, and this provides a dedicated space for the team to discuss and plan in a visual and accessible way by the entire team. Plus, lists show where each card is in the pipeline, so stakeholders know exactly what stage a feature is in for development. And marketing and sales teams can see what is being worked on and what's up next to plan for launches, training, and collateral creation. So once again, this board can be set up however works best for your team. This one has a list for ideas, researching requirements, estimating, and sprint candidates. Another way to maybe set up a board like this could be a backlog list, followed by a list for each of the next 3 quarters to plan out the product roadmap. These are just a couple different ways. You might want to experiment and see what works best for your team when planning for the next 3 to 9 months or the next bunch of sprints. So cards start in the ideas list, where product managers, stakeholders, account managers can add ideas and requests to be considered in the product roadmap. So cards should include a description of the feature, including the user story and motivation from a business perspective for creating this feature. Any cases or tickets that come in from support, customer success, or sales should be attached to the card here, so that everyone on the team can access them and learn from these cases about the customer pain points when considering an idea. And so we actually integrate in Trello with a lot of popular ticket and case management apps like Zendesk, Help Scout, Intercom, and Fogbugs. These are all available as power-ups. So as you can see here, I have a Zendesk ticket attached to the card. And if anyone wants to learn more about it, we could click right in and go to that case in Zendesk. Another great thing about using a power-up to attach cases to cards is that you can see a card badge here for the number of tickets or conversations or tweets about something directly on a card. And maybe if you notice that there's 30 Zendesk tickets piling up on a card, it's perhaps something that you would want to consider prioritizing in a sprint coming up soon. I also want to recommend on a product roadmap board enabling the voting power-up. This way, team members and stakeholders can upvote the features they're most interested in. And this also will then help product managers prioritize the roadmap. So anyone can go through and vote on the cards that they would like to see developed. So as cards are prioritized, they are moved out of the ideas list and into the researching requirements, so that the project owner can evaluate what needs to get done to design, develop, and implement a feature. At this point, any At this point, any design, technical specs and mockups can be attached to the card at this stage, and you can attach them through integrations with your, from your computer, from Google Drive, Dropbox, Box, OneDrive. We have integrations with all those apps, and we even have power-ups for Google Drive, Dropbox, and Box that will enable additional information, bring additional information to cards. So if we have a mockup we want to attach from Google Drive, I can just attach it really quick to a card. I'm not sure what I'm going to attach here, but let's just say attach a screenshot for a design feature. And now everyone can access that file right in Drive. A simple way to just make sure that everyone that's on the design and dev team has access to the information. So at this point, team members should freely discuss the proposed specs for the feature in the comment section of the Trello card, so that the history surrounding any decisions are made in one location, and they're really accessible by everyone on the team. You can, mention anyone on the board to draw their attention, even mention the entire board. Send that, and just kind of get people's feedback when you're researching what you want to implement. Also, at this stage, specific steps in designing, developing, and implementing the feature should be added as a checklist to the card. If there's any cards that you want to refer to in this process, or maybe specific subtasks, you can actually copy and paste a link to a Trello card or Trello board in a checklist item, and save, and you will easily be able to link out right to that card, which is great. If you have if you're setting up a process for certain tasks that need to get done before the next tasks can proceed, you might call that dependencies. So anyway, once we're done researching the requirements, planning it out, we're going to move over to the estimating list, where the difficulty of building the task is estimated. And so at this point, a good idea is to set up a basic point system in Trello. You can do this a couple ways. Either you can kind of just make a parentheses and add points to the card. Or what I like to do is with the custom fields power up, I create a custom field for story points that I can just quickly use a drop-down list to add points to a card. And for those that aren't familiar with the custom fields power up, it's a really cool new power up we have. You can add fields for text, numbers, checkboxes, dates, drop-down lists. So in this case, I'd create a drop-down list, story points, and then the my point system. And to talk more about that point system, points are essentially estimates that are used to measure the degree of difficulty for a task. And often they're based on the Fibonacci sequence, which is 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Essentially, it's the last number and the preceding number added together makes the next number. And what this does, it can be a quick way to rate the difficulty of a task, to make sure that your team is not going to be overloaded with work during the next sprint. And the reason why one uses a nonlinear numbering system like the Fibonacci sequence is because, in honesty, time estimates are really difficult to make. The bigger the task, the more uncertainty revolves around it. You might have a lot of moving parts, other tasks that you get done before it. You don't really know exactly what blockers are going to come up. And so by creating a system like this, it recognizes the difficulty of a task without producing a false level of confidence for the specific level of difficulty. So as you can see here, I have my story points are displayed on the front of each card. No longer need this number right here. And this way, now we can get a better idea of how difficult a task might be. So once we have an estimated idea of how difficult a task will be, we'll move it over to the sprint candidates list and to await an upcoming sprint. And depending on its priority and its difficulty with relation to the rest of the features that will be developed in the next sprint. And you can also, these can be prioritized by just moving them up and down to prioritize which ones should go into the next sprint. A couple other useful features on this board. You can use labels to label certain feature types. So if you go to a card back, I can name labels for, let's say, maybe this is web, and maybe this is a feature for iOS, and I have a feature for working on for Android, maybe some bugs even, although probably not in this process. And I can apply these labels then to cards so I can see, get a better perspective on what features are being requested across our product. If there's a lot of web features to be developed, a lot of iOS features, can help planning for building out the team. Maybe we need more front-end devs for web or devs for iOS. You can also you can filter cards by labels, which is convenient. So I can see all the web or any label that's applied to a card can be filtered. So you can just quickly surface exactly how many features are, how many features in a particular category are being requested or scheduled for design. So that basically shows how oh, and I guess one thing I should say is that, when you're ready to, a sprint candidate, when it is ready for development, you can either move the card from your sprint candidate list to your sprint backlog list on the sprint board for the next sprint. And that's a really easy way to manage that. So I can, or you can just archive the card, when it's done. But what I can do is if we're going to begin working on this, I can click move and try and remember where my sprint board is. Move it to my sprint backlog. Oh. And then it'll appear on the sprint backlog. Oh, I have a different board, sorry. Let me send it to the right board. I have so many demo boards available these days. Anyway, to my, ooh, look at all these Trello boards. There we go. Send it to my sprint board, to the sprint backlog for the next sprint. I can move it there. And now as you can see, I can access that. And then when we're ready to work on it, it can be moved into the in progress list. So once again, that's a way to manage a internal product roadmap. It's also become more popular to use a Trello board to share a public roadmap with your customer and your user community. And this could either be the same board that your team uses internally, which would definitely be a very transparent move, or it might be something that is more high level that shares more generally what is being developed. Either way, these product roadmap boards can also be used to get input from your community. So one public roadmap Trello board that I love is the Front app product roadmap. And so as you can see, this is a public facing board. Anyone can find this. It's publicly searchable, and any Trello member can interact with this board. So on this board, as you can see, they've enabled the voting power-up so that users can vote on the features they'd like to see prioritized for development. And they also provide a handy way for users to easily contact the Front app team with any suggestions. You can also, on a, I'm going to quickly switch to one of our product boards, our product roadmap, which doesn't quite have currently as much of a community focus. It's more about just sharing kind of what has been pushed live. But if you wanted to, on a board like this, You could also really engage your community even more by um, allowing public members to comment on cards. So if you have a public roadmap board and you want to get more in-depth feedback, you can enable commenting, so then people can leave comments and share more about their use case and their ideas and what they would like to see developed. But going back to the front app roadmap, as you can see, by having the voting system from your user community, it really allows product managers to prioritize what they're going to what they should work on next. Obviously, this card has 100 votes, so it's next up. I love seeing that. I love like the fact that as someone that works at a company developing a product, I can see what my users want. So we're making smart decisions and not, building features that no one's going to use. And it's also great on this board how they share the progress, with their community. When something goes from an idea to design to coding to shipped, your user community can see this and they can see the progress of each feature. One thing that's really cool is, say there's an idea that you really enjoy. If you're a public member, you can encourage your community to subscribe to a card. And so now that I'm subscribed to this card, as you can see by the little eye icon here, when this goes into design and then code and then ships, I'll get a notification right in Trello that Front has developed and shipped this feature, which from a user perspective, I think is really great because I'm going to get notified as soon as they put it in that list that it's live. So that's a really handy way to just use a public road mapping board to engage your user community. So anyway, that really kind of wraps up my presentation on retrospective and road mapping boards. I really wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A because I'm sure there's a lot of questions, and I want to invite Jess Barnett to join me during this Q&A session because she really knows tons about retrospectives and roadmaps, and we could even, if we have time, tackle sprint boards a little bit. Really want to focus now on the questions about the boards and features demonstrated. And if you have additional Trello questions, if there's time, I'd love to get into those as well. So please enter any questions you have in the GoToWebinar box, and I'll make sure to address as many as possible. We have about a good 25 minutes. If you do have to leave the webinar now and have questions, or if you would rather ask your questions in private, or if you have any feedback or anything, just email us at support@trello.com, especially with those more complex questions that might be difficult to answer right in the moment. And once again, everyone, you should receive a copy of the recording of this webinar in the next few days. So please feel free to share it with the rest of your team if you'd like. And thanks everyone for joining me. Jess, if you'd like to unmute your mic and join me for some Q&A.
Hey, Brian. Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
This was awesome. People have been asking so many awesome questions. I'm so excited.
All right. Well,
You ready?
I'll steer the boards here if you want to kind of jump into some stuff.
Sweet. Okay. So the first question that we got was really, really awesome. They were asking us if we use physical whiteboards for retros. And you actually talked about a whole bunch of this stuff throughout the course of the presentation, but I thought it was such an awesome question. I wanted to just kind of reiterate some things about why I think Trello is really great for retros, even if everyone is all in the same physical location all the time together. So one thing that's really nice, and we didn't really get into too much in this webinar today, is that with using our power-ups and by having the board created ahead of time, everyone can add their own cards before the meeting even gets started, which is awesome. Usually in retros where there's like a whiteboard and people are writing sticky cards with the things that they're thinking about, you get to the room and like everyone has to sit there and think about the things that have happened. What have we done the last 2 weeks? What did I have for breakfast yesterday? What's life like? And it's like it takes a long time for one thing, and it's hard to remember what's happened. And so one thing that's really nice about having a board created ahead of time is that people can go in and they can add things throughout the week or 2 weeks or months, depending on how regularly you're having these retros together. And then that saves time in the meeting and and makes it easier to remember the most important things that have happened. One other really nice piece of this is that everyone's writing their own cards out. And in a lot of retros that I've seen in the past, they're physical. The participants are not always writing things, and they're not writing or writing anything at all, maybe. In some retros, a facilitator stands and says, like, what are you guys thinking about? What do you think happened? Like, what went wrong? What can we do better? And then they like write out these things on the whiteboard or on stickies themselves, and no one's actually writing, and no one is speaking to the things that they're feeling and that they're thinking about, and that creates kind of an unbalanced dynamic, and it can make it really hard to get people who are more introverted or quieter or the most upset even to participate in the conversation. So it's really nice that everyone can write their own cards ahead of time, and the facilitator isn't bogged down by having to do that in the meeting. And it's also really awesome, just to be like so explicit about this, to have a written record of what happened in that meeting and what you said your action items were going to be, what the team agreed to work on. That's like absolutely the most important part of having a retro. And it's another thing that in a physical situation, usually then the facilitator, if you are writing this stuff down, the facilitator is like, okay, great, I'll take these 20 or 50 or 100 sticky notes and I will like go type them up now. And I'm like, the first time I saw this, I was like, this is crazy. Like, what? This is like way too much work. And she's like looking at the handwriting and can't read it anymore and like forgot what was said. So Trello boards are like super awesome, even if everyone's there in the same meeting together for all those reasons.
Yeah, but I
And
think
one
also,
thing maybe we can,
oh, so I
oh,
was going to
sorry,
say
go
also
ahead.
when you're dealing with physical whiteboard, I mean, you never know if someone's just going to accidentally erase everything, all your action items that you discussed that you're planning on, like could just get erased. It's gone. With the Trello board, anyone can access it anywhere. There's a permanent history that can be recalled.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, One thing that maybe we can email folks, Brian, is a little bit more on how they can add cards ahead of time
Mm,
using Slack and Zapier and our email to board feature even. It's really easy for people to like add things ahead of time. If you're using Slack, you can add them right from Slack, which is really awesome. That makes it like super seamless. You don't even have to keep going to the same board until the meeting. You can just type in the stuff.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah,
So let's see what up. Next we have so how do you build team engagement? How do you get the team to engage after you've invited them to the board?
yeah, this is a really fun part. So usually what I've done in the past is I've added people to the board, created the board. As Brian showed you guys, you can just copy this template, this retro template, copy it, have it sitting there, add the people who are going to be in the meeting, and then you can invite people to add cards in the meantime. Don't just like let it sit there. Just tell people, hey guys, so scheduling the meeting, we're going to be meeting, in a week and a half. We're going to be talking about all these things, kind of set the tone for the goals of what you're trying to accomplish. Let everybody know, hey, this is a meeting where you guys are going to speak to the things that you would like to try to improve, or the things you think are great and you want to keep doing, or really anything else that you want to have time to really talk about with the team that you think is really important. Go ahead and add the things that you'd like as you think of them to this board so that we can sit down and have these conversations, in a week or whenever the meeting is scheduled. As I said, it's really to do that using some of our different plugins and extensions and integrations and power-ups, so that part can be really super seamless. So then you get to the meeting, and some people may not have added anything, right? Like they're like, oh, I don't know, like people might judge me, and like really like don't know what to do. So this is where a facilitator can be really, really helpful. I think it's important that everyone add at least one card, and really a better number is probably like 2 or 3 cards. Asking everybody to think about what the team can do to improve, or even what things they liked and really want to keep doing, is really, really important. And it's really important to hear from everybody in a meeting. You don't want it to be just like the one cranky guy, talking the whole time and like nobody else is communicating and sharing ideas. Doesn't create a good dynamic.
That's true.
So definitely as a facilitator, be brave, ask people to share and talk about stuff. And if they're feeling especially shy, maybe think of examples that have come up that you might be able to prime them for. Or just ask people, at least in the beginning, really, well, just say something good. Just say anything good that you really liked about this week and what happened.
I think it's why,
And then over time, people can feel more comfortable with it.
yeah, I think that's why I like the idea of starting out with everything positive. Like it's easy for people to get into, get into the groove, talking about stuff. I think when we can talk about some of the positive stuff first, it kind of lightens the mood, and then it helps people to start discussing things, and then really actually getting more into the nitty gritty details about what can be improved.
Yeah, I love starting with what went well. I think that's such a great thing to do, and it can be like new hires or like holidays or fun. It could be anything fun or anything happy, anything that brought joy and delight and productivity to the team. All that stuff is really important to pay attention to and to celebrate, so you can keep doing it. Okay, so next
So
one was really interesting.
there's a quick question. People were wondering if you said for creating cards. Did you say you use? We mentioned Slack and also Zapier for creating cards, automating a process to create cards from outside of Trello, and then the email to board feature, which I can
Mhm.
show real quick. Some people are asking about that.
Oh yeah.
So just really quick, everyone, your Trello board actually has you have your unique email address for every Trello board you have. This is totally unique to you. Don't go sharing it. If you do, you might want to generate a new one. But basically what this does is it allows you to create cards via email. You can pick what list they go on and where they appear. And it's so maybe if you're not on the retrospective board, but you have this email address to your board, you can on the fly from email or something, just quickly create a card on a Trello board. So that was what someone was asking about. Anyway, the next question. That's an interesting one. Can people post things anonymously? Not really.
Yes. Yeah, not really. So I say not really because if you're using like Zapier or tool like that or a bot or something to add your cards in, then you actually kind of maybe sort of can. But that's not really what I want to focus on. What I do want to focus on is that if you just go to the board and you create a card, Trello is great in that it shows you who created the card. That's actually a really good thing. And some people, feel kind of hesitant about that, and they're like, well, what if, people start complaining or, saying really mean or nasty things about other people? And I think usually that's not the case. I don't think I've seen a lot of retros in a lot of different companies and a lot of different teams. I don't think I've ever seen one really get ugly. So one, don't be afraid when you don't need to be afraid of something that probably won't happen. But also, set the tone to be really positive. Retros are about seeing how the team can help itself do better and be
Mhm.
happier and be more productive, right? So the tone that you set and how things are phrased are really, really important here. Just like any other part of communication, right? Like if you walk up to someone and you're like, hey, you suck and you've made my week lousy and that's why I hate you, that's not really starting things off on the right foot, right? Like that would just not go over well. If instead you frame things in a more positive way and in a way that shows that you really want to find a solution to things, you can make really awesome things happen. So to pick a more like tangible example, you might have a dev team and I'll choose a really like Agile specific example here. Like a dev team is like, oh, I keep getting these requirements from the product owner and they're totally garbage and the product owner keeps changing their mind. Okay, totally a stressful thing that can definitely happen. But framing that in a way that's more positive might be something like, how can we do a better job avoiding confusion in requirements that are written, or how can we help clarify more detailed requirements up front, or what can we, how can we prevent changing requirements from derailing the team, or things that are really focused on how to find a solution to that problem and work together. And that might be something like, well, the product owner had no idea that they were doing things that were messing up the team. Like they need to know that. And then you can come up with ways that might help. Like, well, the lead engineer is going to help coach them on how to write more, full requirements or whatever. We can pick a million different examples. But the important part here is that you want people to frame things in a really positive way and in a way that is looking for a solution to things that can make things better, and not just using this as an hour to complain and vent and bitch about things. And certainly like that happens, but that's not what a retro is for. So you want to make sure that people are speaking honestly and truthfully to things, but not doing it in a way that is going to be, really hurtful or just destructive. Like this whole process should be really constructive. And one thing that's really good about this is that you really want people to be encouraged to be honest and open, and to not be defensive if someone was derailed or disrupted by something that happened, to not just be like, well, I have it hard too as a product owner, and I was really busy this week because like, whoa, don't be defensive either. Stay really positive, be honest, be open to change, and then this becomes a really positive experience for everybody.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And then let's see.
One thing that might be helpful,
yeah.
if this is like a really bad time in the company too, or like if oh, this is like a really rough time, we're going through a big restructuring or something. Last thing on this, you might you might say like, hey guys, if you have any concerns about things, or you have things you want to bring up, but you're not sure it'd be appropriate for this meeting, come and ask me and I'll see if I can help. And maybe as the facilitator, you can help with that. And this is certainly like, not every single thing needs to be handled in a retro environment either. So if you're like, this person's a total slacker and I think they should be fired, like that's probably more of a conversation to happen with management than it is to have in a retro, right? So there's like a time and place for things too.
Right. You want to be reflecting on the sprint, not the overall. Whatever, not every thing that's going wrong with a company should be happening. It should be mostly focused on the work done over the past sprint so that the next sprint is successful. So,
I mean, some of that stuff can be fine too. Like you can talk about some of those things, but I think the context is really key. Like, it's just, and some things are like really, truly something I want to bring up one-on-one or in private. So that's anyways. But I mean, I do think if the team is like, oh, like I'm really concerned about shifts in the company or this strategy change, or things can be bigger than the sprint. That's not, there's no reason for that. But
so moving on.
Anyhow,
would you typically save all your past retro boards? If you're having weekly, biweekly, every 4 week sprints, how do you feel about that? Dealing with the clutter of a lot of boards.
Yeah, I really love being able to go back to retro boards in the past, and not as like a thing to do all the time, really, but I've done it a couple times, a few times maybe, and it's been really helpful to go back and look for what things was the team bringing up a while ago that you've really improved upon, and what things are maybe still ongoing issues that are getting brought up again and again, and maybe you've been trying different approaches, but they haven't been working. And as a facilitator, I've gone in and try to highlight the ways that we've really improved over time. Hey guys, back, 6 months ago or a year ago, the code quality was such an issue. We were talking about it in every meeting, and look, we made all these changes and now it hasn't been brought up, in the last 4 or 5 months. Like, that's really awesome. We should celebrate that. Or, we've been trying these things on code quality and they haven't been working. Maybe we should revisit our approach and like really dig into this today. Yeah. So if they do start feeling cluttery, though, you can always close a board and reopen them. Maybe you can show the guys how that works. You can also use collections if you're a business class team to keep them all kind of together. And you can also even create like a separate Trello team if you want that are just for the retros.
Yeah. So it looks like we got a bunch of questions here and not a lot of time. One thing, someone was asking how Trello can add the number in the custom field. That's actually a request we get a lot. And so that means the total number of story points or estimations in each project. That's a request for custom fields that's not available yet, but definitely am sharing that with the team. I'm going to really quickly post some links to some third-party extensions that can help, Points for Trello and Scrum for Trello, that can do some of that for you. So let's, I'm going to post those, and I'm going to get the next question going while I'm sharing those things. Let's see. Let's see, what's a good question here? How often would you do a retrospective on a product development board? Or, sorry, product development project?
I think a really good starting point, even if you're not doing sprints, is every couple of weeks. That gives people enough time to do some work and then enough time to talk about it. But ultimately, I think it's up to the team. So if you guys find that doing it more frequently or doing it every week, maybe if you're going through a lot of things, you're really trying to be aggressive about improving the process, you can do it more often. You don't want things to fall too far, though. Sometimes, if then things are so far gone, you're talking about things you've already fixed or aren't problems anymore. So I wouldn't, ideally, like every couple of weeks is probably a good cadence. Every month might be okay.
Oh,
But it kind of depends.
no, that makes sense.
And
Yeah.
you can adjust it. There's no hard and fast rule.
Right. Oh, here's a question everyone's dying to know. How do you add emojis to the list names? I'm using a MacBook right now. So on a MacBook, you can actually hit Control Command Space and bring up an emoji selector, and then I can pick the emoji, and it'll appear in the list name. If you're on a PC, I know there's extensions you can get for an emoji selecting keyboard. I don't believe it's built in. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way you can add emojis to list names, which I think adds a ton of fun. You can also put emojis in like card descriptions um, and comments as well. So uh, you know, just kind of nice way to add some visual fun to your cards and your boards. Um, so glad to see that was a hot topic. um, Jess, how far in advance of the meeting do you send out or add to the people to the retro board?
I would say every time you're done with the retro that you're in, just copy that board template over and kick off the next one. So then there's never a downtime in when people can write down the things that are on their mind. If you're doing them more kind of ad hoc and one off, maybe a week, send it out on 5 or so days before your next meeting. But ideally, you're holding them regularly. So I would say, just as soon as you're done with one, start the next one.
Yeah, and then people are asking, how much time would you usually spend in a retro? Like, what kind of time block
Uh,
would you put?
yeah, I think an hour is good.
Yeah,
And there can certainly be points in the conversation where you realize something might require a smaller group, and that can, you want to have a follow-up conversation about it or, what have you. Not everything can be solved in that meeting. So it's great to say, as a facilitator, like, okay, it seems like a separate conversation might be good for this. Let's make our action item, that some group of people will talk more about this and bring us back takeaways next time. But an hour to have a conversation is good. Much longer than that, people will probably lose interest, get tired, and all that. So it's good to time box your retro and get as many things done as you can in that time, and then come back again during your next retro and talk about new stuff.
great. And then so a question about product roadmap board here. Um, when you first, well, I guess yeah, when we first at Trello released our product roadmap publicly, did we find that we had to make adjustments, and what, if any, lessons did we have? So Jess and I have actually been talking lately a lot about how we can improve our product roadmap. I will say that one thing a few years ago, we now have over 16 million users of Trello. So we, as you can see, we used to have comments enabled on these cards, and it was kind of just became hard to manage all the comments. I think it's really great getting all these so much detailed information from the users, but we're such a small team at the time that it was a little bit um, hard to manage. And then we'd have maybe some cards that were just lots and lots of feature requests. So one thing that you might want to see, I think it's definitely worth trying to engage your community as much as possible. Voting is a very safe start on a public roadmap board, but and then if you want to try out comments, like you should definitely facilitate the discussion on your roadmap because you're going to get more detailed information from your users. At the same time, it does require kind of monitoring, and so you might should be aware to probably spend some time on that. Do you have any road mapping input, Jess? Some best practices or anything you'd like to talk about?
I think you did a great job summarizing some of the things that we've learned. I think it worked really, really well when Trello was getting started, and before we had grown so much, and now with so many users all over the world, it became, this huge thing. So we've been looking for better ways to connect with people and hear about how they're using Trello and what ways we can make things better. And so we've turned off, commenting as you mentioned, but we've opened up other ways that people can chat with us and participate in what's going on. And we plan to make this our board much better as soon as we can, because we want to do more stuff with it, certainly. Yeah, I think it depends on kind of the scale of your business might be a good starting point. If you have, 10 million or 100 million users, then a board where everyone's commenting might be a little odd, unless you have enough people that can kind of participate in the community there. Like if you have a support team that's dedicated to helping with that, it might be more manageable. In our case, that wasn't how it was at Trello. So we turned that off for now. Not necessarily off forever.
That's true. And
Feel free to write into us about some of these things too if you want. We might be able to get into more specific questions.
yeah, always feel yeah we can talk more in depth at support@trello.com. So there's just 2 minutes left here. I just want to real quick. Someone asked about is there a webinar scheduled on the sprint boards? So well, actually, if you go to trello.com/webinars, we have on demand. Here we go. The sprint board webinar. You can watch that every time you like, anytime you like. And yeah, I'm probably going to schedule another live version of that webinar because it's great just being able to have these conversations and have a live Q&A and share, everything about the sprint board. It's way more fun than an on-demand viewing. So that is something I hope to do this fall. Also, really quick, I'm going to post in chat. We'd love it if take a survey. If you could fill out a survey for us real quick, just a few questions. Kind of would love to know, how you're using Trello in an agile way. Also, how you're using Trello your company, and also what you'd like to see in future webinars. We really want to expand on this platform, and so any feedback would be really helpful. I just put the link to the survey in chat. And 1 minute left. So the last question here will be, someone asked about reporting tools. There's some great reporting tools in Trello for sprints. Elegant, Corello, Screenful, Burn Down for Trello. We actually have power-ups for all of these. You can try them out on your boards. If your board's associated with a team, you can enable a power-up board. So you can try out some of these reporting tools. Harvest is another one. There's also some external, some third-party apps like Reports for Trello and Plus for Trello. Those are available in Chrome, I believe, or reportsfortrello.com and plusfortrello.com. Those are some ways to get some reporting for your sprints. If you want to bring some data into, after your sprints or into retrospectives when talking about the successes of a retrospective. Of a sprint during your retrospective. Yeah, so that's about it. Jess, anything else? Any last minute feedback, takeaways, inspiration?
So happy you guys all joined us today. This was really awesome. Feel free to reach out to us, drop us some notes in that survey if you have a moment. We'd love to hear more from you all and look forward to the next webinar.
Yeah, and next time we should probably turn our webcams on so you can see us talking. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. It's always great having these, and you can always reach out to us on Twitter and via support at Trello or anything. We're always glad to carry this discussion further and talk more about this subject matter. So have a great day, evening, morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you soon. All right. Bye.